I've got some Battlefield 6 open beta tips that are really actually useful. They're going to help you learn the new features very quickly and allow you to just have more fun. I'm not going to just go over all the new game features or anything. I'm focusing on actual gameplay tips to help you learn quickly, enjoy the game more, and just have a grand old time, because the servers aren't going to be up for long, so hopefully this will get you on your merry way. Let's get into it. We're going to start with movement, but I have timestamps below covering all of the other details. So there's a few different movement mechanics in this game that are different to other Battlefield games. Firstly, crouch sprinting is one. You can dive, and you can still prone onto the ground. Now, what's interesting is all three of these movement mechanics are separated with different keybinds. And on top of that, you have control on whether you want to crouch, toggle crouch, and prone, and dive to the ground. I highly recommend you go through your own keybinds or controller mappings to set things up in a way that works for you. But I'm going to go through my settings so that you understand how movement kind of works in this game and how you can separate keybinds to get even more fluid movement. So if we go down here, what I've done, and I think this is quite important, is to separate prone and dive. There are actually two separate buttons here. This is called slide in this game. Slide and prone and crouch should all be on separate binds, because sometimes you'll want to crouch, sometimes you'll want to prone, and sometimes you'll want to dive, and being able to choose when to do these things really elevates the movement in this game. So I've got prone set to Z. I've also got crouch toggle on, and if I hold this down, I'll go into prone as well. And then I've got slide on C. Now, if you're a controller player, then there'll be different key mappings for that as well. Now, another really interesting setting is the flick look option. This is going to be really useful on controller players, but it's also quite useful on PC at times. With it, you literally flick your mouse or flick your view instantly, and I'll show you that in game, and it can be pretty useful. So with those settings in the way, we now have a few different options for movement. So if I crouch first and then sprint, we activate sprint crouching. You move pretty fast, but you've got a lower sort of height and a smaller viewable model. So it's going to be really good for like getting between areas and trying to stay alive in some pretty tense situations. And then we've got the dive, right? So this is on a separate key now, and that'll actually slide along, and you can slide and jump out of this, which is nice. Or you can jump and slide into it, which is nice. Or you can jump prone, right? Or you can slide prone. So you can interchange all of these movements into different ways. So if you plan to slide and you want to try and get into safety, then you can slide into a prone animation like that. And when you initiate the prone, it allows you to sort of change your direction for a second. So if I slide this way and then prone this way, it allows me to essentially slide around corners. So I can initiate a slide and then follow it into a prone to be able to, like, you know, get into some pretty interesting situations. Now, it's important to note the slide and prone mechanics are different. Prone is the traditional prone we've seen in Battlefield. When you do it, it's going to take your weapon out of ADS, and you're going to have a bit of a delay before you can start sort of having good weapon handling again, okay? So if I prone like this and try to shoot, it's going to be a little bit more difficult. If you slide, you retain your weapon handling. So this is going to be a lot better of a way to sort of do it, right? But the important thing to note about the slide with the setup that we've got is after the slide is done, you will go back into whatever position that you last started with. So if I sprint run, fully standing into a slide, I will end in a standing position. So that's why it's important that you can follow up with a prone. So if you want to slide and then end the slide on the ground, then you need to follow up with that prone animation, right? So once again, slide prone. It just allows you to be a little bit more fluid with movement. And then we've got the flick maneuver, right? Which is pretty crazy. So you're instantly flicking. You can also do it right like this as well. Now, obviously, if someone's shooting you in the back on controller, this is going to be amazing, right? It's going to be a little bit disorientating at first, especially if you're aiming this way and then suddenly turning, you got to aim in. But it's a very strong way to quickly turn around. And also, on top of that, if you want to turn a corner quickly, let's say we're running this way and we want to turn into this corner. We can use the right flick to get right around the corner, right? So you can keep holding sprint and do a right flick or a left flick, and you'll be behind cover, right? So we could be like this, and it's just a little bit of an easier way. If, for example, you've got a low sense, then it could be useful. But to me, in most cases, I think the backwards flick is the one that's most useful, and it retains your sprint as well, so you can just quickly turn around. Now, what's really interesting about that is the way that it can also be chained with movement. So if I slide like that, the momentum of the slide continues as I turn around. So I can slide like this and then suddenly turn back the other way. Or if I do a right turn, a right flick, look at how the slide momentum is carried over into the right. So it's a really interesting way to sort of like change direction. If you do it right as the slide first gets its full boost of momentum, you'll get the best benefit. So this is really, really quite beneficial if you learn how to time it right. Now let's talk about cover peeking. That's another feature in this game. Basically, most cover in this game will give you this option. When you walk up to it, you'll sort of like peek out like this. Now, we're behind cover, but when I ADS, it's going to automatically peek us out. And this will work on most areas, right? Even like small sandbags or cars, it will still work. Now, not only that, we're not actually mounted to this wall yet. There's an extra button that will sometimes appear and sometimes don't. But you can do it as long as you see this indicator, you can press the mount button and you'll then mount to the cover. Even if it doesn't say mount, you can still do it. So I can go like this and I'm mounted. The mount button will depend on your settings, but by default on PC, it's F. And you can mount pretty much anything. Like if I go over to this truck here and I mount on the side of this truck, it even works here, right? So this is going to limit the view the enemies have of me. Now I can look down this sight line with just my head and shoulder peeking out, basically, right? Which is really quite nice. And you don't need to press anything to leave the mount. You just literally walk away from it. And it mostly works pretty much anywhere. Sometimes you end up meleeing, which is a little bit inconvenient. How did I get a kill there? That was weird. So, like that. Pretty much on anything. Although it's a little bit janky at times. Another mechanic I want to show you, which I can only show you in-game, is diving and dive rolls. This will help you reduce the amount of damage you take. You basically need to time it. As soon as you touch the ground, tap the space button. And that will send you into a roll. Now, you don't need to combat roll as well. Like, you can. But you can also follow it into a slide. Like, look at this. So you can slide out of a jump, and even from some pretty high heights, you can still sort of slide into a jump. So to me, the slide is better. I don't know how much height requires you to take damage in this game, but, you know, sliding is far more efficient than barrel rolling in most cases, and it's just timed with a simple crouch. All right, now I want to talk about the weapon meta quickly in the current beta. This could all change by the time the game comes out, but for the current beta, to prepare you so that you can have the most fun possible, long-range snipers are really strong and also really annoying to go against. Yes, there is sniper glint, but if you're caught out in the open, you're probably going to die to a sniper. In close range areas or in domination, then shotguns are super overpowered. They're really, really strong. So if you're playing the assault class as one of your gadgets, you can equip a second primary. So, you know, getting a shotgun or like a DMR for long range is really, really effective. So definitely keep that in mind. As far as other weapons go, the assault rifles are pretty strong. In fact, most weapons have a pretty low time to kill or shot to kill in this game. It's 4 or 5 shots with the AR, and that goes quick. So in this game, if you're peeking people without full health, you're probably going to die. So one sort of tip to remind yourself is, if I've taken some damage, let me just use movement to get behind cover a little bit. You can, you know, slide it behind cover, prone in a ditch, wherever it may be. Wait for your health to recharge and then peek again. You're going to have a so much better time by doing this, by peeking with full health, because otherwise you're going to really struggle because the time to kill is pretty short. Another thing, hipfire in this game at the moment is pretty decent, and you're rewarded for shooting first and aiming down sights later. Like, react to the player by just shooting them and then ADSing. Those few milliseconds of time really do matter, and if you're close enough, the hipfire is going to be effective to take out the player anyway. I found myself in so many situations where I see a player and I try to ADS because they're slightly longer range and then shoot, and that time is enough time for me to die. So shoot first, ADS later, and you have a better time. Now we've got some overall sort of like tips for Battlefield in general. Number 1, revive your teammates. I don't know why this is always a thing in Battlefield, but just revive your teammates. It does two things, actually three things. Firstly, it's going to help you win because your teammate's back in the battle. Secondly, you don't lose tickets for it, so you're going to probably win the game if you revive your teammates more. And thirdly, you can now drag your teammates out of the way of danger into cover. So if you see someone lying on the ground and there's a bit of cover behind them, it literally costs you nothing to just drag them and get them back into the battle, and it really helps your team. The next thing is just play the objective. Like, I know that's so obvious, but it's a common thing in Battlefield that people don't play the objective and they lose the game because of it. Just remember the objective's there. Like, I know it's all about having fun and just going around shooting people, but remember, the objective's there, and if you want your team to have a better time as well, then just remember the objective. Just keep an eye on it sometimes, because if you don't, then suddenly everything goes terrible all around you and you're just losing all the time and you don't know why. It's because you're not paying attention to the objective. Another cool feature in Battlefield 6 is the spawn system. It's very similar to old Battlefield games, but you get a nice little camera on all of these spawn locations. Whether it's a zone or a player that you're spawning on, that camera will show you what's going on in that area. It might be an aerial view of the battle around a zone, or it might be the literal camera, like body cam on that player, showing what's going on and what they see. So pay attention to that so that when you spawn in, you're not suddenly surprised and dying off spawn all of the time. Like, this feature alone is one of the coolest things that they've added, and it's really going to help you make sure you know what's going on as soon as you spawn. Next, I want to talk about audio in this game. Probably one of the best audio designs we've had in any Battlefield game yet, but I want to highlight something that has been very apparent for me. Footsteps have been designed in a way that enemy footsteps are far clearer and louder than allies. This is something that a lot of modern games are doing these days, but very noticeable on Battlefield. So if you're hearing footsteps louder than you would first think, then it's probably an enemy. And you can really use this to your advantage, whether there's a player behind a wall, upstairs, downstairs. You will learn very quickly what an ally footstep and an enemy footstep sounds like, and this is going to help you just know so much more. Speaking of knowing so much more, the minimap is your best friend. It really is. It's going to allow you to know where enemies are, if they're above you, if they're below you, and it's kind of like a cheat code, really. If you just pay attention to the minimap, you can basically use it as free wall hack. I think it's a bit busted and should probably be nerfed a bit, but if somebody is shooting, they're going to appear on the minimap, and you can use that to your advantage. Next, I want to give some class tips. There's some interesting things here that have changed from past Battlefield games. This is not like Battlefield 2042, of course, but the class system is still different to, say, Battlefield 1 or Battlefield 5. There's more for classes. There's more abilities and gadgets and traits, essentially. So let me break down how it all works. How they're going with it to begin with, and this may change, and there will be playlists where this is different, but any class can use any weapon. However, each class has signature weapons that have added benefits for using that weapon. So the Engineer has improved hipfire control with SMGs. The Assault has faster draw and switch times and better sprint recovery for assault rifles. Supports have no sprint speed penalty for LMGs. And Recons have stabilized aim by holding breath and rechamber quicker between shots for snipers. So you can mix and match any weapon type for each class, but each class has special traits for using their signature weapon. Now, you also have signature traits besides that, which are like a special perk, or I suppose a special passive, and you can see them on the screen here. You can look for all this stuff. This is basic stuff, right? This isn't really much of a tip, but I do want to break down the traits, the field specs. As you play in each individual match, you will level up, and that will unlock special things. It will unlock passive abilities first, and then an active ability. So you can see each individual class has different perks that basically unlock as you level up in the game by performing more actions. And then the active ability, right? Recon has a UAV, Support has an aid station, Engineer has power repair, and Assault has combat stimulant. So those are all of the like extra traits and perks. It's a little bit different to old Battlefield games, but a lot of it does certainly feel more familiar to long-term Battlefield players is going away from the Battlefield 2042 specialists, whatever it was. Now, I wanted to mention the playlist in the open beta, because some people are getting a little bit confused. There are bots that fill matches, but only in the training grounds playlist. If you don't want to play against bots, go in the featured playlist. There are no bots in this mode. If you do want to play against bots, for example, you want a bit of an easier time getting into things, then play the training grounds modes. Now let's talk about aiming and recoil control in Battlefield. There's quite a lot of recoil. It's hard to learn, all right? You can learn and be an absolute god, and if you do it, then props to you. Very respectful, not gonna lie. But for most players, that's a little bit difficult. I'm gonna give you an easier way to control recoil in Battlefield 6 that's fairly effective. Almost every game has something called recoil smoothing. This is a feature that game developers add to allow players to track fast-moving targets. Let's imagine there's a Jeep moving across my screen. If I track it like this, the recoil is basically gone when I move my aim quickly, because the devs know that me controlling my recoil and quickly moving my aim across the screen is very hard to do. So they allow the recoil to disappear when you move your aim quickly across the screen, so that it's just a little bit more playable. Now, the way that we can implement that into our gameplay is simply strafe and move in the other direction. We're now moving our aim across the screen and strafing to counteract the movement to reduce the recoil. This will not remove all recoil in Battlefield, unlike other games, so you'll still need to pull down a little bit, but not much at all. So a simple strafe to the left and moving your aim in the other direction, and a strafe to the right and moving your aim in the other direction, and pulling down slightly will remove most recoil at most distances. And even like further distances up here, it's still gonna work, right? So just use that, it's much easier. So those are some starter tips for Battlefield 6 Open Beta. If you found this useful, please subscribe and let me know if you want to see more content like this, and I'll see you all in the comments. Cheerio!